Hey everybody, welcome back to Kinetic Void. Today's installment, development patch D11. It's scheduled to come out on Monday, April 7th, 2014. And today I am going over the 3 pages of notes. Yes, really, 3 pages of patch notes for this patch. First and foremost, when you create a new galaxy, check it out. You can now choose a ship to start with. These ships are going to be defaulted, so there are going to be ships that either we've created or have pulled from the community and have put into the starting area. What's great about this is that if you start in career mode, now you don't have to worry about not being able to build a ship. For those of you who are worried about being able to have drones right away, don't worry about that. I am working my best to be able to get that for you guys. We do have tons of updates, so I'm just going to jump right into it. First and foremost, when you're in the shipyard, you're going to see a huge change in the weapons. First of all, they now have textures, which is great, so you can actually see that those weapons have textures on them. Second of all, they have animations, and we have a new weapon manager. Check that out. So you can toggle those animations just by clicking on this little toggle button on the bottom. By clicking on any of the weapon names on the left, you're going to actually have the camera highlight that weapon blue, so you'll be able to see which one it is. If you right click, it's going to open up that weapon's subsystems, so no more hunting around making sure you have all those energy weapons, so on and so forth. Speaking of weapon types, check it out. We now have the anti-missile system, so AMS. This bad boy is going to help you by shooting down missiles that are coming at you from enemy ships. So this little guy here, it's going to be a lifesaver and a total game changer for us. Our drone hangar bay has gotten moved over to the right-hand side here, so it's going to be a little bit more out of the way. This is going to make it easier when you guys are actually going to see what drone bays you already have on your ship. All of our stats have pretty much remained the same, except for in our drone hangar, check this out, we now have an available capacity of 30 right off the bat. That means you can put in those larger drone bays and you can choose the faster docking and launch rates. Also, when it comes to the weapons, we do have 25 new weapon subsystems, and you can actually get a look at those when we're in the weapon subsystem. Check this out. So we have everything from scatter cannons to rail cannons. Here's that AMS system I told you about. We have non-guided and guided missiles. We have a bunch of different kinetic styles of weapons, a bunch of different energy, guided and non-guided missiles, and that anti-missile system. So you will be able to have a very aggressive ship and have a huge variety of different styles for those weapons and be able to make them all look a little bit different from each other. Let's jump into Sector and I will show you guys what has changed on the Sector UI. We had people saying that they wanted to be able to take a look at the different locked on targets and things like that. So check this out. When you left click on a target, you're going to get the information in the upper left hand corner. It's going to tell you what their faction standing is to you, so even if this guy was hostile, if his faction is friendly to us, we might try to run from him instead of fight him if we don't want to screw up that faction standing. Let's go ahead and find ourselves someone who is not so friendly. I'm going to warp to a different sector, and when I'm doing that, I'm also going to talk to you guys a little bit about our warp gates. So we're going to warp right here, this asteroid field number 2. Notice that it says warp gate to Pictoris 2. That's this guy over here. Here's Pictoris. This is Pictoris 2, this specific little planet. So when we warp to that asteroid field, we're going to see a new icon on the horizon. We're used to seeing the stations. We're even used to seeing those mining stations now. But what we're going to be looking for this time is a totally new radar icon, and that is our warp gate. When you go through a warp gate, it's going to jump you from one star system over to another. Let's get turned over here. Alright, so there's our warp gate icon. You can tell it's this circle with a small starburst in the middle, and if you look in the upper left hand corner, it's going to tell you how far away you are from that warp gate. Right click, we're going to tell it to warp within 50 kilometers, and we're just going to jump right up there and I'll show you guys how the warping effect works. We are going to warp over to Pictoris. I don't know what their standing is with me. Hopefully they're hostile. They are. Perfect. That means I'm more likely to have hostile ships spawn around me when I'm in that sector. You can see our warp gate coming up in the distance. About 80 to 90 kilometers is the normal distance that you're going to run into when you're actually going up to a warp gate. So just keep that in mind. The ship that I'm flying right now was originally called Bigger Basic, and then I renamed it Barbie Basic, if you can imagine why. I was playing around with some of the different color maps for the weapons, and that's what I ended up coming up with. So once we are in the warp gate, we're going to see a little screen pop up to the right. Now if you click on Pictoris, it'll pull up a drop down, so if there are other areas you can warp to, those will be on that list. Click Make It So. That might change. It might actually say Engage or Warp or something fancy like that by the time we release next week. But if not, that's what you're clicking on for the time being. It's going to take about a 10 to 15 second delay, and then you are warping out and you are in that new sector. So check it out. We are already moved over to Pictoris. There's the big old planet itself. Oh hey, and you know, while we have the planet pulled up, let me just get really up close and personal to this guy. And we have a blockade, 4,000-ish kilometers. I'm going to lock onto him for now. You'll see that the ring doesn't start red right away, and it says acquiring lock. That's because we did get those sensors hooked up, so now it does have to lock onto the target. When you have a target locked on, it's going to show up in the upper right-hand corner, and it's going to show what its status is with you, which is going to be red, so hostile, the faction status. The health bar, which is the little green guy, the status of their shield, which is blue. Then you can actually see the ship itself. Grievance, this one is actually one of the default ships. Okay, here we go. So that planetary proximity warning. It's not going to be right in the middle of the screen anymore. It's going to be just kind of down on the left-hand side, kind of out of the way. Nice place to see it. I am going to warp. We're just going to go within 250 kilometers of this guy, of the blockade ship. He has quite a bit more durability than I do. Not so much as far as the... Not so much the actual setting for it. Okay, so here we go. 100 kilometers away, acquiring lock again. I did drop that lock while I was in warp. And I am going to hit G to open up my weapon manager, make sure everything is set to be weapon group 1. If you want to add the weapon groups, you just click on the boxes there. And the AMS, you don't assign a weapon group to that. That is just going to be the automatic setting for it. Let's launch our little drones. I have 5 drones to go do my dirty work. It's just going to take them a minute to get launched out. And we are still pretty close to that planet, so we're still going to have that little warning down there in the bottom. Alright, so I have my drones, they're all behind me. Now my drones can actually fly faster than I can in this particular ship. So I tell them to go all attack, and off they go in their formation to go attack that blockade ship. Now I don't remember if the blockade has any missiles or not, so hopefully they do, so I'll actually be able to show you guys that a little bit. And before we get too deep into the combat, I am going to knock my sounds down a little bit further here, because it's going to get loud as soon as I start shooting all my weapons at him. When I hit the number 1, you're going to see a little box pop up here. So that means he is now assigned weapon group 1, so that particular target is going to be associated with that weapon group. My AMS is right here, so if he does shoot a missile at me, my AMS is what's going to be used to take that missile out. One drone left. This guy does not have long to this world. And you can see that his health is almost out. Now my standing with the Syndicate has changed by -25. I'd say my bad, but really, you already knew it was going to happen, right? So if you go to their name in the faction list, I started out as not so bad with them, actually. So the more I fight them, the worse my standing is going to get with them. But that was just to show you guys kind of how the setup is with the new user interface. So you're going to have your basic details on the left, you're going to have anyone you're locked onto on the right, and you will actually be able to assign those weapon groups properly now, so that won't be an issue as far as being able to make sure you are able to fight all those guys effectively. Just to show you, even asteroids do show up on this menu on the left, so you can actually see when you click on an asteroid inadvertently. Next up, Piat System. We already talked about that, so you guys don't have to worry about that anymore. We do have a higher probability now of the AI spawning ships that are closer to your size. So don't worry so much about having those dreadnoughts spawn if you're in your little light fighter. It can happen still, but it's not quite as likely to happen. Your ship names are allowed to have spaces and underscores on them again. That was one of the other things that we did change. You saw the toggle for the animation for animating those weapons. Moved
to US.
And then if you notice, let me get back over the station here. We have a mining station over here, and I do have to jump back over to a regular station. Let's go to station 1 so you guys can see. When we approach the regular stations, the docking icon used to show up in the middle, just like how the planetary proximity warning worked, but in this case, it's actually going to change back over now to being just the station's docking information. Alright, so let's see what that station looks like. Oh god. Alright. Luckily for me, the station is only 1,000 kilometers away, and my ship is fast enough that I should be able to get outside of this guy's hostile range pretty quickly. So the downside of me playtesting so many different weapons is that I have tons of ships that I've saved that have tons of weapons on them. And as you guys are all familiar, the weapons or the ships you make are the ships that are likely to spawn on top of the basic ones that we already have in game. So this ship is called Weapon Testy. It has one of every hard point on it, and one of every type of weapon system on it. Not every subsystem, but it's got 2 lasers, 2 missiles, 2 non-guided missiles, 2 kinetic, and 2 anti-missile systems. So, me going up against that, even though it's a really small ship, it is a tough little guy. So we're flying up to the station, and as you guys remember, we did do the station update last patch, so the stations had the facelift, so to speak, the last patch that we did, and that was pushed out at the beginning of March. I believe it was like March 3rd for the initial, and then March 10th or so for the official patch for everybody. Let's turn off my kinetic flight. There we go. So when we have the dock with station icon pop up, that's going to be on the right, instead of it being right in the middle there. We fixed a ton of things this patch. Like I said, the patch notes are 3 pages long, and you guys will be able to access those straight through the Steam beta patch notes subforum. So check it out there starting Monday afternoon, maybe Tuesday morning, depending on when we get those patch notes updated and get the patch pushed out. Again, this is Capix with Badland Studio, just checking in so you guys have an update on the development patch D11, when it's coming out, and what's getting changed. Thanks for watching.